Hey everyone, Mike Miller with the Herald-Times, joined by IU basketball columnist Jeremy Price. Previewing Thursday's 7 o'clock tip between Indiana and Purdue. You can catch the game on ESPN2 and follow us on Twitter at MikeMillerHT and at JP Price. It's always a big game when these two teams meet, obviously, and certainly a huge game for Indiana's sake. They could certainly use some help padding their NCAA tournament resume. Indiana hasn't been very good away from home, so this is a game where you have to take care of business at home.
Plus, the way the schedule ends for Indiana is obviously very heavily road-loaded, so Indiana's got to take advantage of its opportunities at home. It's sort of interesting how this game shapes out because coming into this season, you looked at two matchups for Indiana and Purdue in the final month of the regular season, and you thought this might have a lot to do with who wins the Big Ten title, and it might from Purdue's perspective. From Indiana's perspective, these are big games now simply because of the opportunity to get in the NCAA tournament, and nobody left on the schedule offers a better resume building opportunity than Purdue.
And perhaps nobody on the schedule as far as personnel is as stacked, as good as Caleb Swanigan, who's averaging, I think, 19 points, 12 rebounds, a double-double per game. Probably the front runner for the Big Ten Player of the Year title. How does Indiana stop that?
Well, it's interesting, this matchup with Swanigan, because now, in the past, it was all about Hammonds and Haas is still there, but he's secondary on the scouting report, really, because of what Caleb Swanigan has been able to do. So Indiana's got to figure out a way to match up. We saw against Wisconsin, Indiana opted to have Thomas Bryant guard Nigel Hayes, opted to go with Juwan Morgan on Ethan Happ. They might opt to go something similar in this kind of situation, but the problem is that Haas is such a matchup issue for Indiana. Really, I think Deron Davis is probably the best matchup opportunity there, and he's been coming off the bench because, as Tom Crean has recently said, there aren't a whole lot of other options as far as the front court goes coming off the bench, so you've got to save somebody there, so that's why. But I think we probably will see a fair dose of Bryant and Davis together in this game because of the problems that Haas and Swanigan present.
Suddenly, too, Purdue actually has a backcourt. They have some guards who can score, and P.J. Thompson's really grown this year as a shooter. He was, you go back 2 years ago, I think he was shooting something like 26, 28% from three. He's now closer to 40% if he's not there already. And he's not the only one. You have Ryan Klein. Carson Edwards has added a lot to that backcourt. Dakota Mathias is shooting well from three. This is the best three-point shooting team in the Big Ten. How does Indiana kind of counter that?
Well, I mean, part of the reason that they're the best three-point shooting team in the Big Ten is because teams know that with Swanigan and Haas, that's the primary thing you've got to take away, and you just sort of have to take your chances with the three-point shooting. Unfortunately for opponents, that hasn't gone very well the way that Purdue shot the ball this year. But I think that's still probably the recipe for a team like Indiana, is not that you want to give them wide open three-point looks, but you want to see, can they knock down those three-pointers and beat you? You don't want to get beat by 50 points in the paint.
We'll see what happens with James Blackman Jr. too. He was warming up, obviously, on Sunday at Wisconsin. Wasn't ready to go quite yet, hadn't practiced prior to that Wisconsin game, but it seems that if he's not ready for Purdue, he's getting very close to being ready. Yes,
and I would be a little bit surprised if he didn't at least try to make a brief go of it against Purdue. How much, I'm not really sure, given that he apparently hasn't really practiced, at least leading up to Wisconsin. Whether he's practiced in the last couple of days, we don't know yet. But if not, you would think that for sure he'd be ready to go by the time Michigan rolls around on Sunday. And depending on how this Purdue game goes, obviously, whether Indiana wins or loses this Purdue game, that game against Michigan is one you definitely have circled as a must-win for Indiana.
Can't drop those games. Can't really drop games at home right now for Indiana. So this is a huge one, rivalry aside. For Indiana's sake, you gotta pick up some games here at home. 7 o'clock at Assembly Hall. You can catch the game again on ESPN2. Follow us on Twitter at MikeMillerHT, at JP Price. We'll talk after.